Alright, you know what? Mulder really was correct. The truth literally is out there. Hello and welcome to another Sci-Fi-Night special. I'm your host, Sebastian Wendell Martinez, and many of you guys might remember that last year we did a special on haunted movie sets, which basically told us about the scary things that happened in real life relating to the movies. And we're actually going to go in a kind of similar direction with this episode, where you guys will realize that the truth definitely is out there. So in another Sci-Fi-Night special on some real life scary stuff, here we go. If you haven't seen our special on haunted movie sets, then I definitely recommend doing so first by clicking the annotation here. It's okay, I'll wait, just come back, do so. It's one of our best episodes by far. So, The X-Files returned back to television this year with some pretty meh results.
Yeah.
It just lacked a lot of that original magic, felt off and kind of weird. Still though, The X-Files remains one of the most famous sci-fi TV series ever, and for good reason. Every week, fans would be glued to their TV screens to see what special agents Dana Scully and Fox Mulder would run into. The now classic show about the unlikely FBI duo who seemed to encounter something paranormal on a daily basis gave us tons of classic episodes, storylines, and characters. Remember the episode Squeeze and Tombs about that creepy-ass mutant that could contort his body to squeeze into places and kill people? Remember the whole alien conspiracy storyline? Remember the cigarette-smoking man? Oh man, this show was great, and it gave us some super strange things to think about. So you know what they say, fact is stranger than fiction, and when it comes to the X-Files and real-life unsolved events, that could very well be the case. While the X-Files mostly features aliens, monsters, and crazy government conspiracies taken from the minds of the writers, there are some episodes that were actually based on real-life events. Yep, you heard that right. So from the strangest UFO case out of Russia to mysterious toxic blood that makes people pass out, let's check out some bizarre real-life events so weird that they inspired elements of X-Files episodes. We're gonna start off with one of the most disturbing episodes, which is actually based on one of the most horrible serial killers of the 20th century, Jeffrey Dahmer. In Season 2, Episode 13, Irresistible, we get hit with a very different kind of episode focusing on very real terrors, a serial killer by the name of Donnie Pfaster, who is deemed a death fetishist by Agent Mulder.
Do you need a shampoo for chemically treated hair?
Pfaster collects hair and fingers from his victims and was originally supposed to be a necrophiliac in the script until Fox forced them to change it due to it not being acceptable by their broadcast standards. Unlike some of the network's quality television.
But
it
I have
still
been
begs the
obsessed with
question,
Jesus.
though, it still begs the question, why would you be interested in the founder of Christianity?
Because it's my job as an academic. I am a professor of religion, including the New Testament.
Anyway, back to something almost as scary as the Fox network. While investigating the murders, Pfaster takes a liking to Agent Scully and even manages to kidnap her. The thing is, at one point, Scully sees Pfaster as some kind of demon approaching her, which is a final piece in regards to what inspired this episode revolving around the super creepy serial killer Donnie Pfaster. The episode was inspired by infamous real-life serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, like I said, who also preserved certain body parts from his victims and was actually a necrophiliac.
He indicated that he had filleted his heart and kept it in the freezer, and he also kept his bicep.
He would also kidnap his victims and hold them against their will, just like Donnie Pfaster. There are also real-life accounts of Dahmer's few surviving victims claiming that he shape-shifted into something not human and horrible while they were held captive, just like how Scully saw Pfaster.
There are reports of people who had been in the power of Jeffrey Dahmer who actually claimed that he shapeshifted during those hours when they were held hostage, that his image actually changed, and I think that was a really frightening thought.
So while this may not be very paranormal, it's definitely scary and terrifying enough to be an X-Files episode.
The question of the existence of evil is an important part of the story, and it had the face of evil, which is what Scully's subjective points of view represented. You'll see in the episode several faces that are a sort of amalgam of her idea of evil.
Alright, so that's all pretty horrible, but we're about to get mysterious with one of the strangest unsolved cases out of Russia, which is definitely saying something. In Season 4, Episodes 9, Tunguska, and 10, Terma, we get introduced to what is pretty similar to a Russian-US Cold War-style arms race involving alien technology.
The existence of extraterrestrial life is a global and multinational conspiracy, not just an American one. And there is another Cold War afoot, a race to find what may be the cure to an alien virus that's on the planet.
In it, some rocks containing strange alien oil lead agents Mulder and Alex Krycek to Russia.
What you're looking at is quite possibly from Mars. I think we'd all like to know what's in that rock.
Where they speculate that the Russian involvement in this case might lead back to the Tunguska event of 1908. So you're probably wondering what the Tunguska event is, and of course, you're about to find out. The Tunguska event refers to a still to this day unsolved mystery that occurred in the Krasnoyarsk area of Russia, where Mulder and Krycek are in the episode.
The first one called Tunguska, which is after a place in Russia where some kind of cosmic event occurred.
The morning of June 30th, 1908, a huge explosion occurred in the region that completely flattened over 2,000 square kilometers of forest.
There was an enormous fireball blast, something on the order of 15 megatons of equivalent energy, which is roughly 1,000 times that of the Hiroshima blast at the end of the Second World War. This was an extraordinary event.
It's classified as an impact event, meaning that something crashed into the center of the area, but remains of an asteroid or comet weren't found. There was also no impact crater, which there should be if a comet crashed onto our Earth.
Kulik assumed he would find a crater at the point of the meteorite's impact. To his surprise, there was none.
He looked for meteorite samples on the ground because often when an object hits the Earth, it throws up debris, and the debris is recoverable around the edges of the crater. But of course he didn't find that either.
This is made all the more strange by the fact that this is actually the largest impact event in human history, so you'd think there would be some more substantial evidence of an actual impact.
As the object came in, it was being decelerated and squeezed by atmospheric forces. It blew up with the force of a hydrogen bomb. The shock wave smashed down the forest, knocking trees away from the blast and resulting in a pattern away from ground zero.
This also brings us to the oily rock in the episode, which refers to another impact event, namely the meteorite remains found at the Allen Hills in Antarctica, which scientists at the time admitted could contain evidence of extraterrestrial life not from this planet.
Scientists concluded this ancient rock appeared to contain evidence of Martians.
Not living organisms, but the fossilized and chemical remains of ancient Martian life.
Unfortunately, that's where the real-life connections end, but series creator Chris Carter and writer Frank Spotsniz kind of filled in the blanks between these two real-life events by claiming that the reason for it all was aliens. So if you thought real-life serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was a pretty terrible thing to base an episode of The X-Files on, get ready for something worse. In Season 3, Episode 9 and 10, titled Nisei and 731, we got another two-parter that involved the overall alien conspiracy plot. In it, the mysterious Japanese Unit 731 are conducting experiments trying to create alien-human hybrids. Unfortunately, the real-life counterparts of this X-Files unit is way worse. Right, so in the episode we follow a shady Japanese organization, but the real-life counterpart is just flat-out horrifying. Unit 731 of the Imperial Japanese Army operated during World War II. The unit might not have been tried for war crimes, but it's well documented that they committed horrible atrocities against prisoners and even civilians, involving extreme forms of torture and scientific experimentation. Alright, so before I go into details, let me just warn you, what I'm about to talk about is actually really horrible, so if you want to skip some terrible stuff, just click this time code here. Okay, so Unit 731 not only committed regular rape and torture, but they even dealt with different types of what's called medical torture. They exposed people to biological warfare agents.
And in questioning these people, we learn the following, that their relatives all around them died within 10 or 15 days. The people who are still suffering to this day from the attack by the Japanese during May to July of 1942 were children at the time, but they had something we call innate immunity, so they didn't die.
Caused forced pregnancies, vivisection, and tons of horrible, unspeakable things.
And they would expose prisoners, various parts of their bodies, to these temperatures, freeze them, and then try various techniques to literally dehydrate them to see what was the most effective way of dealing with frostbite, so that that could be used in warfare as well, both to protect Japanese troops as well as to affect the enemy.
There's even rumors of them putting live insects inside people. What's crazy is that after the Japanese surrendered, many countries, including the United States, agreed not to persecute the employees of Unit 731 in exchange for the so-called data that the unit had retrieved from their experiments. What the governments have done with this data is to this day largely unknown. Okay, so with the most horrible entry out of the way, let's get to one of the most mysterious. Okay, so last year for Halloween, we did a Sci-Fi-Night special on The Thing and its influence. One of those who was influenced by the sci-fi horror classic was X-Files creator Chris Carter, who wrote the episode Ice, the 8th episode of the first season. In it, agents Mulder and Scully travel to a research station in Alaska, whose entire crew seems to have engaged in some kind of murder-suicide.
We're not who we are.
Now it turns out it's all chalked up to some kind of prehistoric parasite taking control of people it comes into contact with, much like the alien in The Thing. Okay, so it probably sounds like that episode is completely based off of The Thing, but there actually was some real life events that also inspired it. In the episode, the parasite discovered in the ice by scientists is believed to come from a sample around 250,000 years old. X-Files writer Glenn Morgan is said to have thought up the idea for the episode after reading an article in Science News regarding a scientific expedition in Greenland where a 250,000-year-old item was found encased in the ice. What exactly this item was and what happened to it is kind of hard to clarify though, which makes the whole thing even more mysterious. We're gonna finish off with one of the defining episodes of the overall story arc from the X-Files and a really bonkers real-life case. In the 24th episode of Season 1, the finale episode titled The Erlenmeyer Flask, we get a very true-to-life scene. In this episode, a person with ties to Agent Mulder is on the run. He gets injured and is picked up by an ambulance taking him to the hospital. While in motion, the ambulance crew attempt to give the injured man a shot, but when they puncture his skin, a poisonous gas emerges from him and knocks the paramedics out. Wait, poison gas coming out of a person's punctured skin? That's gotta be bullshit, right? Wrong. Or well, probably wrong, anyway. This set piece in particular is based on a peculiar case of Gloria Ramirez, also known as the Toxic Lady. February 19, 1994, Ramirez was taken to the hospital on account from suffering of the symptoms of cervical cancer. She was brought into the emergency room at Riverside General Hospital in California, and the medical staff began working hard to try and improve her condition. After sedating her and beginning more advanced procedures, the staff noticed that her skin was emitting some kind of strange oily sheen, as well as some kind of odor. When one nurse attempted to draw blood, she picked up some kind of ammoniac-like smell coming from Ramirez and passed a syringe to a colleague shortly before passing out. The colleague who received the syringe also started feeling ill, but before she could be asked any questions, she also passed out. Lastly, a respiratory therapist fainted before the staff evacuated the emergency wing entirely, as Ramirez's body was emitting toxins affecting the entire staff working on her. In fact, the Toxic Lady's body was so dangerous that 23 people became ill and 5 had to be hospitalized simply from coming into contact with her. Unfortunately, Ramirez died shortly after due to kidney failure, and obviously an investigation started to determine what actually happened. Suspiciously enough, the cause of the faintings and subsequent hospitalizations was deemed to be mass hysteria, which seems a little odd. The personnel was experienced and shouldn't have been too affected by hysteria that easily. Also, the family pathologist wasn't able to determine the cause of death due to the body being too badly decomposed. Also, let's not forget the fact that the crew who were actually working on her claimed that the body was emitting some kind of strange fruity and garlic-like odor, as well as being very oily while they were handling her. There was a theory of dimethyl sulfoxide causing a noxious gas to emit in reaction to electrical shocks, but this has been pretty widely dismissed. Chances are there was no alien involvement in Ramirez's death, but the whole situation is very, very weird. So obviously this case played a part when Chris Carter wrote the script to the episode The Erlenmeyer Flask.
That's a good idea.
Alright, so that about does it for the Sci-Fi-Night special on real-life events that inspired the X-Files. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you know of any more, because there actually are a few, let us know what your favorite is in the comments below. So, as always, I'm your host, Sebastian Vendel Martinez. Happy Halloween, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Happy Halloween, 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 happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy Halloween, 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 happy Halloween.
Okay, here's something you may not know. Shooting out the tires on a runaway RV is a lot harder than it looks. I then tried a different approach.